Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What Would You Change with the Super Monkey Fighters. I am Loki, here with Monkey Feathers and Papa Nugget. Howdy.
Hello.
We're going to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Came out in 1986. It is the story of a high school wise guy who is determined to have a day off from school despite what the principal thinks of that. Even though he wasn't the principal, he was the dean of students. Because this high school was more of a college than a high school, it seems.
And he had nothing better to do with his life.
Yes. Really with his life, because he stuck around well after his responsibilities were, Was directed by John Hughes, as all movies in the 80s were, outside of Terminator and Alien. Stars Matthew Broderick, Alan Ruck, Mia Sara, Jeffrey Jones, Jennifer Grey, Cindy Pickett, Lyman Ward, Edie McClurg, Charlie Sheen shows up in it. Oh, also notable for people who have itchy red eyes, Ben Stein is the economics teacher, which is probably how most people know him, or from Win Ben Stein's Money. If you're into politics, though, I believe he was a speechwriter for one of the presidents. I want to say Nixon, but I could be wrong. Look that up. Let me know in the comments. One thing I do want to point out that I don't point out enough, because it did stand out to me as a positive in this film, was the cinematography. Tak Fujimoto was the cinematographer. So yeah, what'd you guys like?
I like the secretary. I find her an amazing character, especially when she is sitting at her desk pulling pencils out of her hair, and each one's like a new surprise, like, oh, look, another pencil.
Another one.
Oh, look, another one. I really do like the secretary. I find her a very entertaining character. But if we're getting more into what the heart of the film is, and a lot of the heart of what John Hughes and what he writes and what he directs, it's very realistic in storylines, where in this movie, you have a kid who doesn't want to go to school. And so he wants to take the day off and go and do other things. I don't know if he exactly planned his day out to be what it was, where he got to go to a baseball game and catch a fly ball in the air, or to basically crash a float and be able to lip sync to it, because I'm going to say clearly It's not him singing, but a lot of the day seemed kind of extravagant, but at the core of it, it's very much a realistic storyline. It's not over the top crazy. It's just he wants to take the day off and he wants to spend it with his friends. And so it's a storyline that when it comes to Ferris Bueller, it's hard for me to just say what I like, because I just like the story itself, and it's always kind of a film that I really do like. And it's just a story that I will probably always, if someone says, hey, you want to watch this movie? I will gladly watch this movie. And another thing that's really great about this movie is it has a very iconic soundtrack, especially when the reveal of the Ferrari in the car, or when the dean of students is walking after he's gone through the day he's gone, and the bus shows up and he gets on the bus, and it's very iconic music. And
well, it was interesting with that scene too that stood out to me. He gets on the bus at the end, and it was like the bus was, every student on the bus was a different character from a 1980s something or other. Like the kids that are on sitting in the seats behind him were Crockett and Tubbs from Miami Vice. So it was just like, wow, these are all okay. I just never really noticed that before. So I did think some of those hidden little features in there. So,
well, and the museum scene with that music, it's very much, it's hard for, I probably won't have a whole lot that I have bad to say about this movie. I really like this movie.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot to like about this movie. It's never been one I've liked terribly. It's been a whatever. I mean, most John Hughes movies are kind of like that for me. They're just like, okay, that's, meh, it exists, and that's that. I did love that the cinematography there were those shots when they're in the Sears Tower and they're putting their foreheads on the glass and looking down. The angles were different, unique angles. They had the reflections off the glass. Those kinds of things were really cool. That helped it stand out a lot from the movies of the time, or for those kind of just comedies of the era where they were just throw the camera on a tripod and people will walk into the scene and move around. The cameras don't move. We don't do anything really new or unique. It's all about the action on the scene. And so I did like that. That stood out and it kind of pulled me in a little bit more.
I think overall the characters are good. For the most part, I do have some specific things to talk about, but I think in general, it sets up a good environment to tell the story that it's trying to portray. And I think they do a good job at that. Like all the gadgets and kind of the little traps that are set throughout are a good touch to add to the story a bit and kind of help weave that maze and try and get you in to Ferris's head as to kind of how he was setting this stage to get away with it, so to speak.
The gadgets, I kind of put those in both columns because I do like specifically the way he rigged up. When the door opens, it would roll over the mannequin in his bed.
Yeah,
like that whole thing. I was just like, oh, that's really smart. If I were a parent and had done that, I would have totally believed it. I also probably wouldn't have just left my kid in there, but it's also kind of in the negative column too, because you can see the mannequin in the bed and you can clearly see that it's not him.
Yeah.
And so,
but
that also does kind of gets him in the end with some of the gags is that,
they're not perfect,
they work on the surface,
right?
and so again, realistic, believable. It fits something that somebody could do. Whether or not it would actually work out. Yeah, characters. That's one of those things that I think stands out the most in this. Ferris is a very charismatic, confident person. I've always seen it more as the movie's more to me. It's more about Cameron, his friend. Like he's the more interesting character to me.
The whole story with Cameron, where he finds out that you can't just roll back the miles in a car by driving it in reverse.
Yes.
But his whole speech where he's basically trashing the Ferrari. That's part of the statement that I have, that it's a realistic, like a heartfelt story, because you can feel what he's feeling with the relationship that he has with his dad, or the lack of relationship, so to speak.
And he's the one who goes through, there's a character arc there. He's the one who goes through a journey. Ferris is the same at the end as he is in the beginning.
Yeah.
Ferris is kind of the guide through that journey. And so to me, it's always been the story's always been about Cameron and less about Ferris, even though it is very much centered around Ferris. It's kind of the beginning and the end, but it's mostly like it's Cameron's story to me in the middle. And that's interesting. I do really like that.
It's a more interesting story.
Yeah.
Out of any of the characters, aside from the Dean of Students.
The Dean of Students, and randomly his sister, which she's a good character. They're both good characters for the villain-ish elements that they play, but still kind of strange, where they're both kind of out to get him, but it kind of bounces back and forth as to who's actually out to get him. So yeah, it's the events in it to me, like it's great that they're not ridiculously over the top fantastic. They're the day off, they go to the ball game, they go to the museum, they go eat lunch. It's
they
believable
crash a parade.
Things. They crash a parade.
I'm gonna have to disagree with going over the top when it comes to the parade scene.
Well,
I don't know about you, but I just don't show up to parades, hijack a float, and start lip syncing,
Cameron,
and everyone. Yeah,
everyone goes along and has a dance montage,
and that's gonna.
It was the 80s.
Start going into my dislikes.
Yes, and that's one of the things with John Hughes, especially, is the random dance montages. Like,
the
way I imagined it is like storyboarding it out, or mapping it with blocking out scenes and those kinds of things where you're just like, okay, this and then this and then this, and that we need to get from here to here. How do we do it? I don't know. Dance montage. So, but it's not fantastical, completely unbelievable.
I'm
He's a
going to
very
disagree.
charismatic kid.
I think it's unbelievable.
It's
Completely.
unbelievable that he could con his way into.
Well, they didn't show me anything. They didn't show me how he did it.
Let's transition to the dislikes within that. The dance montages. And again, it's a John Hughes kind of thing. There's just random dancing and everybody's on board and they all just are happy. And there's different segments of troops of people. That's where it detracts for me.
And I think if it was just that dance montage in and of itself, maybe it wouldn't stand out. But I think that coupled with just Ferris as a character, there's so much that's not explained about him. We're just led to we just have to accept it.
Yeah.
But they don't play to it like a few times and then let it go. It's throughout the entire movie. But they don't explain why he's liked so much. Why do all the kids like he knows everyone. Everyone knows him.
He's Ferris Bueller.
Exactly, and that's not a good explanation.
No, it's not.
I imagine because just thinking about my time in high school, he's very charismatic, and I think that people gravitate towards that, and that people want to be around that because it's it's infectious. So I imagine that everyone knows him just because he's charismatic, and
so he's going to be a cult leader because he lies to everyone. To get his way. He's a terrible person. He's charismatic, and he's going to be a future cult leader.
Well,
so why would I want to watch a movie about this?
His best friend has even said that. He's like, you've been saying that since the 5th grade, and it's not true. And if I don't go and do what you're going to say, you're going to just keep calling me and harassing me until I do it.
Is that the sequel?
So I guess I'm going to say that the sister is probably the character you identify with the most. Of how does he always get away with it, and why is it?
What? Because she sees the rules through them?
She sees through it, and she's upset that rules don't apply to him that apply to everyone else.
Right.
That's her. And that's boy in police station's key moment. Lesson learned for her. Is that she needs to not worry about him and just keep worry about herself and focus on herself, which I don't necessarily. I don't know. To me, it's a weird moral where it's like, okay, yes, you should definitely do that, but at the same point in time, you called the police because a man broke into your house. You got arrested, and then now your mom's mad at you for filing a fake police report.
And the thing,
all of that, none of that's realistic and believable. So
that's a problem that I have is the fact that someone's just going to say, "Oh, you filed a fake police report because someone broke in your house or tried to break in your house or something of something." It's like, someone's going to break into your house and you catch them and you call the police. They're not going to stick around and just wait for the cops to show up. They're going to leave.
Well,
so the fact that you're then blaming it,
as the cops show up, they're going to walk around and see that his wallet, the wallet is sitting in the middle of the kitchen, right? Like the police don't do any work. They just show up and say, "All right, you're going to jail. This is a fake report." None of those things are
realistic,
believable, and realistic. And they happen just because I don't even know why they had
it's because they
had to get her out of the house
because she's Ferris's sister and the cops like Ferris and know that.
So
I don't know. They don't explain any of it. Just accept it.
Well, and the whole
just accept it.
I'm accepting that. What I'm not accepting
who's the cult leader
is
now?
what I'm not accepting is the whole. He's the principal. I'm tired of calling him the dean of students. He's the principal.
He's the
whatever.
dean of students.
What I'm not accepting is the fact that he just essentially takes the day off to try and catch Ferris in all of these acts. He
breaks into their house.
Yeah, he breaks into their house.
My favorite scene.
The fact that he breaks into their house.
Yeah. Well, even before. He's a madman and he should be in jail. But even before that, he's like, I'm going to go and I know Ferris has done this. So I'm going to do some, I'm going to call around to these places and talk to these people And all of those places check out. Like nothing suspicious about the places that he calls. Like he gets he gets answering machines for the places that they're supposed to be. You know, Ferris has set that up very well. But then he's like, I'm going to go. And he just randomly walks into a restaurant and accosts some woman. Like, is that your plan? Like, you have no idea where they could possibly be. So you're just like, pizza place. That sounds right. Somebody wearing a leather jacket. I have no idea what clothes he's wearing. I haven't seen him today, so I have no reason to suspect that this would be him. So I'm going to just walk up and...
In ties with that, the whole scene of Ferris picking up...
Oh, yeah.
Sloane. I had to remember her name.
Yes.
When Ferris picks up Sloane, and right in front of the principal, they kiss, and it's just like, but you're posing as her dad? You shouldn't...
The principal's response, oh, that's how it is in their family.
Yeah.
Like, and as the principal... You should probably be a little bit more concerned, or sorry, the dean of students. You should be more concerned that, you know, one of your students might be in a bad relationship at home
with their their father. Yeah,
and that's kind of where it's like some of the characters fall apart. And the reason I like Cameron the most is because to me, he's the one who has the story. And the thing about Ferris being that charismatic, everybody loves him, all of those kinds of things. I've never seen that. I'm sorry, I can't take the coolest guy in school can't be the guy who wears a leopard print sweater vest. That's not cool. That has never been cool. That's not the kind of person that people follow. I can't.
Are just judging.
To me, Ferris Bueller has always been the cool kid for the nerdy kids. Like he's never been, you know, yeah, he's charismatic, but in real life he's not, you know. And you know, he's the kind of kid who would get beat up or made fun of in high school because he is eccentric and over the top. So yeah, those are some of the kinds of things that just always bugged me. The lip syncing thing always, people talk about that one as being the iconic scene, and I've never, like, that's never done it for me. Like,
well, I mean, I would still see it as an iconic scene, but I would also see it potentially as it not doing something for a lot of people, because clearly you two, Mr. Nugget there is just
terrible.
Like he
the more iconic scene is the Ferrari going through the window at the end.
I think more iconic scene would have probably been the two guys who are watching the Ferrari as they sail up into the air and, you know, down onto the ground and things like that. That would kind of be what I would assume to be more iconic with the Ferrari.
One of the things that kind of struck me a lot this time through, specifically with Cameron, is I don't think Cameron survives this movie. I think after the Ferrari goes through the window and he has his big revelation and he's like, nope, I'm going to be a man and I'm going to stand up to my dad and we're going to have a conversation. And then that's all to just let Ferris know everything's okay. And then as soon as Ferris leaves, I think he goes and kills himself. Like, that's...
Stop being so tragic. Stop.
You don't see him the rest of the movie. He's an integral part, and it's just...
Well, because there's not much left to the rest of the movie.
To me...
There's like 5 minutes left.
No, there's like 20 minutes. There's like 20 minutes of him running through the backyards and...
But that's
and then credit scenes.
There's nothing left to see of him.
Yeah,
you're ruining people's childhood,
maybe it was just more that Cameron, it was a better performance. It was a more interesting character to me. But it's the first time I've ever thought about that. I was like, oh wait, this doesn't end well for Cameron. Like he's not going to stand up to his dad and be fine. He's, you know, to me, it stood out as that and was bad, I guess, for the ending. But that's the point where the movie switches back to being Ferris's world. And you're like, oh, right, this isn't about Cameron, even though the secondary character had a story arc and learned something about himself. Now we're back into Ferris world and he's running through the forest. And
you're ruining this movie for everyone who is watching this video.
Making it more interesting for me and probably ruining it for everybody else. Isn't that the staple of what would you change?
Yes.
Changes.
I thought of one while we were discussing it, and I've lost it all. Maybe I'll think back around to it. It was a simple little...
I imagine your change would be just to have it end on a negative note where Cameron doesn't survive the end and he just kills himself, because that's how this movie apparently needs to end.
If you're going to leave it ambiguous, I gotta fill
It
in
wasn't
the blanks.
ambiguous. It wasn't ambiguous. You just turned it into an ambiguous ending.
You don't know what
Because-
happens to Cameron after the end of that. You don't see any resolution between him and his father. You don't
You
see
don't
anything. Ferris
don't
runs
need-
home, and that's that.
Because that's the end of the movie. There's like
it's the
essentially
80s.
like
It's the
5
80s comedy equivalent of riding off into the sunset. You don't know what
Interesting.
happens after that.
If I were to change anything, drastically about this, the principal / dean of students / commander-in-chief of this college, high school schooling of sorts, because there's so much wrong about it. The fact that, as you said, he basically insulted a woman in a pizza place. He broke into Ferris's home without any regards.
And he insulted
and
it
that's
for what he knew was a man whose whose mother-in-law had just passed away.
Yeah, there's so much wrong, and I get
and
that
even
it's
if-
for comedy purposes, and I get that.
And he also thought that it was Ferris imitating the voice. And even what he was saying to Ferris was not a good thing to be saying to a student.
Yeah, I would change the principal, and it's part of the plot, and it helps I shouldn't even say it's like part of the plot, because it's just kind of like a B story of him just trying to bust Ferris.
Well, it's one of the things that I would change is there's the principal and the sister, right? Choose one. Like, we don't need the two of them both trying to get him.
Yeah, I didn't really understand the sister as much. Like,
yeah, and then
it wasn't
comes
as
around at the end
big
to help him.
Yeah.
It also, she has a bit of a journey with Boy in police station.
That's the only reason.
It's the only reason
they had that arc.
exists. But right, because she has that arc, and so I guess that's kind of why the principal, like that final scene with the principal where she found his wallet and helps Ferris out, and principal loses. Like, to me, it feels more like cartoon villain rather than actual character. Like, he should be twirling his mustache.
Yeah.
While he's plotting against Ferris, rather than, which I guess kind of fits Ferris's character a little bit as well. That he's this fan, he's Bugs Bunny, right? Bugs Bunny always he's the wisecracking. Everybody likes him except the villain.
I mean, the only thing I would say is if they could do more to establish Ferris as a character and what he's all been made out to be. Like, if they could hammer that home with some substance behind it, I think that would help me out. Because, like
more interactions with people at the beginning, so you can see who he, how he gets to convince people, rather than just he plays his keyboard sounds and
like he's made. I mean, all of them are kind of made out to be these like more well-to-do kids. So
this is a rich neighborhood.
Like, there's no so it's hard to like say like there was a real struggle. Like, they have no real life struggle that's being portrayed, and it kind of makes me feel like Ferris just comes off to be a bit of a prick throughout this, like a very he gets what he wants and he takes what he wants kind of mentality. And like, I'm personally not that interested in that kind of story.
Curious why the Sausage King of Chicago would book a reservation and then not actually show up to it for the lunch reservation. Because that is a scene where he's the host at the restaurant is kind of rude to them, but he's also sees through their ruse initially. They have to go to extreme lengths to convince him that they are who they're claiming to be, but they're obviously not. And so Ferris is a bit of a prick to that guy, and even after he gets his way, is still a really big prick to that guy.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things that Ferris doesn't quite stand out to me as a hero, and never really has. Like, I think he's the hero to the nerdy kids, but he's not, like, in reality, he's not, where I think a lot of other characters have pulled that off a lot better. So I think those are the bigger things I would change. It's just kind of consistent villain, right? It's either the sister or the principal. They're both they're both working to the same goal, but separately. But most of the
And then they
early
work
stuff with his sister
against
is
each other for a little bit.
Yeah, but
Kinda.
she's like, when she's at school and everybody's talking about Ferris, she's just complaining. She's not actually doing anything, where the principal is doing stuff.
She's just bothered. She's just bothered.
I remembered. Yes. One thing that I would not necessarily change, but maybe a cautionary tale to homeowners. This isn't the thing I was thinking of earlier, but if the area around your faucet in your backyard is muddy enough that your foot pulls your shoe out when you drop in there, you might want to get that looked at. That's going to cause some big problems.
Might be some
if you let that
issues.
keep going much further. There's a lot of things I would change with, like, especially like the bedroom, like we talk about with some of the gags, right, where the mannequin rolls over. It's like, don't have the mannequin arm hanging out of the bed. Like, you can clearly see, I need to check on my kid, and wait, that's weird. There's a mannequin arm hanging out. Like, maybe just kind of button up some of those issues. And I think definitely leave the non-vague but totally vague ending for Cameron open for interpretation. So if you think that he stood up to his dad and they finally had a real heart-to-heart and learned something, which I really do hope that most of the kids in John Hughes movies actually do, because they all seem to have problems with a non-teacher authority at school, and their parents don't like them. So I do kind of want to learn more about John Hughes and to understand where all of that comes from. Why does he have so much animosity towards guidance counselors and deans of students and those kinds of things? So
I wouldn't say that he has an animosity towards them. I would just say that he's writing a story from the viewpoint of essentially teenagers. And with a lot of teenagers, you view authority as evil, and they're just out there to get you and to ruin your whole life. So I wouldn't say animosity, but I would just say it's just kind of.
But they are fairly often. He does that where it's a teacher who's so and so. It makes them look like an ass, and they're just an angry teacher for unnecessary reasons, and it's like just noticing some commonalities between them. Let us know in the comments down below if you think Cameron lived or died in this film. And let us know what you think about how easy it would be to con your way into a parade, onto a float, to lip sync several songs. Anyway, catch you in the next one. Adios.
See ya.